I don't have much to add, just a slight way that it was kind of explained to me when I was a fellow, kind of the ability to be a sponge, to just take in everything that you're seeing, that you're getting from all these meetings. And then on the work ethic side, I would just add, I've already said you work on things that you never thought you'd get to work on. There's also a function of low man on the totem pole, and that means when the congressman needs water, you go get water. You make coffee. You do those things that you do in any other first job, and it's important. It's sadly, I wouldn't say sadly important. It's what teaches you how to have a good work ethic for the rest of your career. You drive the congressman home. You chat with his son about his school projects. I mean, these are personal relationships that are really built on spending that much time together.
Yeah, I mean, with the benefit of coming last, there's not a lot that hasn't been said that we don't agree with. Just to drive home the flexibility point, the need to be adaptable and flexible. When I started working for Senator Cantwell, in addition to doing health, they said, oh, you should also handle taxes. That'd be great. Great. So, I mean, I don't even ever remember having a checkbook, let alone, that I balanced ever, let alone actually make policy recommendations on tax issues for someone. So that was a major learning curve. And I remember, sitting at my desk, probably with some tears, late at night, trying to figure this out, because the year that I was first gifted with this tax gift was the year that the estate tax was a really big deal. And like I said, my boss was in cycle, so it was a really big deal, and her estate was a really big deal. And I'm sitting at my cube, and the staff assistant from the front desk calls back and says, Rachel, you are never going to believe what just happened on the phone. This guy called, he said he was Bill Gates, and I was like, yeah, right, and I hung up. And I was like, oh my God, my day has officially just gotten worse than it has already been. I was like, where does Bill Gates live? She's like, Seattle. I'm like, okay. Hang up the phone because it's going to ring again. And when it rings again, answer it, say it very nicely, and transfer it back to me. And her phone rang again. She hung up, phone rang again. It was Bill Gates. She pushed him back, so he could share his experience and his opinion on the estate tax issue. And that's when we hung up and said, all right, listen, we're gonna have a little talk. We're in a different space right now. There's no time to cry about it. There's no time to really question, is this really Bill Gates on the phone? Like, just assume that it is and move on. So that was a big lesson in being able to be flexible and pivot. And then we also, 2 weeks later, got a call from Ralph Nader, who was also very interested. He's in the area. But his message was, I really need your boss to vote the right way on this, and if not, we can mobilize someone to run against her. And again, it's, 3 weeks into the job, and I'm like, please hold on, I'm gonna go find my chief of staff. Thanks so much. But it's, at least I didn't hang up on them, right? Yeah, right. So being able to be flexible, and then all of a sudden you're in a session with Ralph Nader and your boss and the chief of staff trying to figure out, what do we do with this information? So, it's fun. The other thing I would say is you've got to have a pretty good sense of humor. I think otherwise you're just going to develop some sort of, controlled substance issue. If you didn't already come with one. I mean, one, you have to deal with all of us because the Winston family is kind of like Hotel California, decades later, and people are still
clearly
here. Yeah, clearly. But and two, just these, you're kind of like in battle, and these are the people that are going to be your family, and it keeps it fun. And at the end of the day, everyone, regardless of your political persuasion, everyone's here working towards the same goal. So.
All right, I'm going to set an example and make it a real lightning round answer. Soft skill and a hard skill, plus all the good answers you've taken already. Hard skill, writing. Writing's extraordinarily important in this town, and I think it's extremely important for the Winston Fellowship as well. Soft skill, having a good time. It has something to do with personality, but it also just has to do with dealing with somebody all day long. And trust me when I say if that person's tiresome, it's going to be a really hard period of time with them over a sustained period of months. Just kidding, Mark. Actually, you're the right talk.
We're on the opposite side.
All great answers. All right, I'm going to ask one more question, then I want to see if anyone else has questions. So, looking over there at Adriana, Lydia, what do you think is going to be the biggest, or what will be the biggest health issues coming up in this, we're entering silly season, campaign season. I think we've probably got some indication of this from some of the presentations today, but give me a couple issues that you think are going to come up that they're going to be working on and that potentially flow into the next fellow's portfolio and might be on their plate.
Yeah, I mean, biggest issue is obvious. I mean, are we going to be able to keep the government open? Are we going to be able to keep the government funded? It's not a health issue per se, but it's hard to do anything on health if there's no functioning executive branch and no congressional staff available because they're not getting paid.
And John, would you be essential or non-essential
I
in your
am.
current position?
Who do you think you're dealing with? Is there anything about me that's essential? Ever?
You're essential to us.
Oh, that's
Right.
sweet. And I think the one bipartisan issue that we've gotten pinged a lot about at HRSA is primary care access, and especially primary care access for mental health and substance use disorders. There's a lot of chatter on the Hill and in the administration about opioid abuse especially. So I wouldn't be surprised if that were an issue that could actually bring people together and actually hold in to do something. But that depends upon having a debt ceiling that passes and at least a continuing resolution so we can keep the lights on. But I'm not sure. Since Kevin McCarthy's no longer running for
All bets are off.
speaker,
Yeah.
Who knows?
all bets
We
are
have
off.
no idea what's happening.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be all about healthcare costs all the time, and everything kind of falls under that, whether it's the drug pricing issue that we're talking about or the consolidation. The research that we've done is very consistent with what we heard from our pollsters and from other panels. The number one issue people are looking at when they're choosing plans in the marketplace is price, price, and price. It's not really, they're not that seemingly concerned about the idea of narrow networks and kind of losing, physicians. It's first and foremost price. And so what that does to then, what that puts on, what kind of pressure that puts on the plans to then be able to compete on price and how they structure their networks and their plans, I think is going to be really interesting. And then what that does for the pressure on drug prices and other things kind of flow out of that.
I don't get this soapbox very often anymore, so
Uh-oh.
I'm going to make a pitch for, there are other places where interesting things happen in this world, and it's called the States. And
What? We're in Washington.
I know, but there's still going to be movement on Medicaid expansion, and that's something that even if it's not actively happening during your fellowship time, it will be kind of an ongoing political issue for quite some time. There's some real interesting on-the-ground stuff happening on delivery system and payment reform in the states that may feed up to federal considerations of 1332 waivers or just interesting additional 1115 waivers from the states to do delivery system and payment reforms. So yes, have a great year here in DC, but also remember there are things going on out in the rest of the world, and it's actually fun to work in the States.
Well, and I suppose what they can and can't do is going to translate into Washington, because if
Right.
they can't do something they want to do, that'll translate into somebody being upset up here.
Right, and those calls from your Medicaid directors to your members are probably not very fun calls.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I'd say the Cadillac tax isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Towers Watson, aside from running private exchanges, advises 80% of the Fortune 1000 on how they run their health plans. We have healthcare consultants and actuaries who tell employers here's the types of plans you should offer to attract and retain talent. And they've done surveys, we've done surveys of our employees, and something like, it's like 60% of them will have at least one plan that hits the Cadillac tax in 2018, and that goes to 80% in 2020. So it's very high. We never get involved in political issues, but we have joined Fight the 40, which is the big coalition that's fighting the Cadillac tax, and we had this very awkward email sent out to all of us saying, we're not totally against it, but we're against it, and we're part of this now. And so I've even heard in my own meetings on the Hill, several I've heard of, your chief actuary was just in here telling us how we should be thinking about this. So that's my personal experience, but I don't think it's going the way Hillary has weighed in on it. That's going to keep coming up, and we have people talk about it before. The other thing is that I haven't talked to anyone politically about the SGR. The delivery system reforms that were contained in the SGR repeal, about